Night flying transforms ordinary aircraft into terrifying death traps. 3 planes, even experienced pilots fear after sunset. Today, we're exposing 3 aircraft that become exponentially more dangerous when the sun goes down. Planes where the combination of their inherent characteristics and the challenges of night operations create situations so terrifying that seasoned pilots with thousands of hours refuse to fly them after dark. These aren't hypothetical concerns or exaggerated fears. These are documented patterns of accidents, near misses, and fatalities that occur with disturbing frequency when these specific aircraft operate at night. It's about fundamental design characteristics that become deadly when you remove visual references, when your depth perception disappears, when the ground becomes an invisible threat rushing up at you. Some aircraft are simply incompatible with night operations because their handling demands, their limited forward visibility, their challenging landing characteristics all multiply exponentially in difficulty when darkness falls. We're counting down 3 aircraft where night operations have claimed lives, where accident reports consistently cite darkness as a contributing factor, where insurance companies charge massive premiums or refuse coverage entirely for night operations. Number 1 on this list has killed experienced aerobatic pilots, military-trained aviators, and commercial pilots during night operations, with accident patterns so consistent that the aerobatic community actively discourages night flight in this aircraft. Before we dive in, subscribe and enable notifications because this channel exposes aviation truths that could save your life. Comment below if you've flown these aircraft at night and survived to tell the tale. Now let's reveal these 3 terrifying planes. Number 3, Citabria. The Citabria, whose name is aerobatic spelled backwards, seems innocent enough during daylight. This traditional tailwheel aircraft has introduced countless pilots to aerobatics and backcountry flying, earning a reputation as a forgiving, fun airplane. But when the sun sets, the Citabria transforms into something far more sinister, an aircraft that has killed experienced pilots who underestimated how dramatically darkness changes its characteristics. The fundamental problem with night operations in a Citabria is the tandem seating configuration, combined with limited forward visibility that's manageable in daylight but becomes catastrophic at night. The pilot sits in the front or rear seat depending on configuration, looking past or over the person in front, with the aircraft's long nose extending ahead. During the day, you can see around the nose, judge your altitude above the runway, perceive the aircraft's attitude relative to the ground. At night, all of that disappears. The approach and landing become exercises in educated guessing rather than precision flying. You're trying to judge your height above a runway you can barely see, trying to assess your sink rate without clear visual references, trying to flare at exactly the right moment when you have minimal depth perception. The consequences of getting it wrong in a tailwheel aircraft are severe. Land flat or nose low, and the aircraft can porpoise violently, potentially flipping over. Flare too high, and you drop onto the runway hard enough to collapse the gear or cause a bounce that leads to loss of control. The accident statistics tell a grim story. Citabrias involved in night landing accidents show patterns of hard landings, loss of control on landing, and ground loops where the aircraft spins around violently during the landing rollout. These aren't student pilot accidents. These are experienced pilots with tailwheel endorsements and hundreds of hours in type who simply couldn't overcome the fundamental challenge of landing a tailwheel aircraft with poor forward visibility in darkness. The instrumentation in most Citabrias compounds the problem. These are VFR aircraft, visual flight rules, equipped with basic instruments and minimal lighting. The panel lighting is often inadequate, making it difficult to monitor critical instruments while also trying to maintain visual contact with the outside world. The lack of sophisticated navigation equipment means you're navigating by visual landmarks that disappear at night, by distant city lights, by hope and prayer rather than precision. Engine failures at night in the Citabria are particularly terrifying because the aircraft's glide characteristics and the pilot's limited visibility mean you're essentially blind during the emergency. You can't see potential landing areas, can't assess terrain, can't judge your altitude accurately. The fabric-covered fuselage and traditional construction offer minimal protection in a crash. Pilots describe night engine-out scenarios in Citabrias as their worst nightmares made real. Number 2, Pit Special. At number 2, we enter truly terrifying territory with the Pit Special, an aircraft so dangerous at night that the aerobatic community considers night flight in this airplane to be somewhere between extremely foolish and suicidal. The Pitts is a purpose-built aerobatic biplane designed for unlimited aerobatics and competition flying. It's a brilliant aircraft in its intended role, flown during daylight by skilled pilots. But at night, it becomes a death trap that has claimed experienced pilots, including former military aviators and professional airshow performers. The Pit Special's forward visibility limitation becomes catastrophic. Pilots describe landing a Pitts at night as controlled falling into darkness, hoping you time your flare correctly because you literally cannot see the runway directly ahead. You're landing by looking out the side, by peripheral vision, by feel and instinct rather than clear visual information. The margin for error is zero. The accident reports from Pitts night accidents describe pilots misjudging their altitude, landing hard enough to collapse gear, porpoising violently and flipping inverted, or simply losing control during the landing rollout because they couldn't see what the aircraft was doing relative to the runway. The Pitts is also an extremely honest airplane that requires constant pilot attention and precise control inputs. It doesn't tolerate sloppy flying or divided attention. During night operations, when your workload is already elevated, when you're trying to manage navigation, communicate with tower, monitor instruments, and somehow land an aircraft you can't see in front of, the task becomes overwhelming even for experienced pilots. The accidents happen to pilots with thousands of hours, with military training, with aerobatic competition experience, because the combination of limited visibility and high workload at night simply exceeds human capabilities. The tandem seating configuration means the pilot in the rear seat, the typical solo configuration, has even worse forward visibility than someone in the front. You're sitting behind the front cockpit, behind the engine, under the upper wing, essentially flying blind whenever you need to see forward. Student pilots doing solo flights in Pitts aircraft are explicitly prohibited from night operations by most insurance policies and flight schools because the risk is simply unacceptable. Engine failures at night in a Pitts are the stuff of nightmares. The aircraft has a relatively high wing loading and sink rate, meaning you're descending rapidly once the engine stops. Combined with zero forward visibility and darkness all around, you have no way to identify potential landing areas, no way to judge your altitude or attitude accurately, no way to set up for anything resembling a controlled landing. Pilots who've experienced engine problems in Pitts at night describe pure terror, the realization that they're falling through darkness in an aircraft that offers minimal crash protection and no visibility for emergency landing site selection. Number 1. Quest Kodiak Sportsman. And here we are at number 1, the most terrifying aircraft to fly at night. And it's going to surprise many people because the Quest Kodiak and related Sportsman designs are actually highly capable, well-built aircraft. During daylight operations, these utility aircraft excel at bush flying, short field operations, and backcountry access. But at night, these aircraft become exponentially more dangerous because their typical operating environment, remote backcountry strips, becomes invisible and deadly after sunset. The fundamental issue isn't the aircraft design itself, but rather where and how these aircraft operate. The Kodiak and Sportsman are built for accessing remote airstrips, rough fields, gravel bars, mountain strips, locations that are challenging enough in daylight, but become nearly impossible at night. These strips often lack any lighting whatsoever. They have terrain that rises steeply on all sides. They have approaches that require precise navigation through mountain passes or valleys. They have surfaces that can be soft, rough, or obstructed. In daylight, a skilled bush pilot can assess all these factors and execute safe operations. At night, all of that situational awareness disappears. The accident reports are chilling. Kodiak and Sportsman aircraft attempting night operations into remote strips have flown into terrain during approach, descended too low and hit trees or obstacles they couldn't see, landed short of the runway in darkness and crashed, or successfully landed but been unable to take off again safely when weather or circumstances changed. The common thread is pilots losing situational awareness in darkness, misjudging their altitude or position relative to terrain, making decisions based on incomplete information because they simply couldn't see the challenges around them. The typical mission profile compounds the risk. These aircraft often operate in Alaska, the Canadian bush, remote regions of the Mountain West, areas where night comes early for much of the year and where weather can change rapidly, forcing pilots into situations they didn't plan for. A flight that starts in daylight might face unexpected headwinds or mechanical issues that delay arrival until after dark. A pilot might face pressure to complete the mission, to deliver supplies or evacuate someone despite darkness falling. These decision points where pilots choose to continue rather than divert or wait for daylight are where the accidents happen. The aircraft's STOL capabilities, short takeoff and landing, which are a huge advantage in daylight, become treacherous at night because they enable operations into strips that should never be attempted after dark. The pilot's skill and the aircraft's capability combine to create false confidence, the belief that because they can physically land there, they should land there, ignoring the reality that darkness has removed the visual information necessary for safe operation. Forward visibility in the Kodiak is actually quite good compared to the previous aircraft, but it doesn't matter when you're flying in total darkness over terrain with no cultural lighting, no visual references except your landing lights, trying to navigate to a strip you can't see until you're almost on top of it. The approach becomes terrifying. Descending through darkness, hoping the valley opens up where your GPS says it should, hoping the strip appears in your landing lights before you're too low to execute a go-around, hoping there are no obstacles you can't see. So there you have it, 3 aircraft that become terrifying at night, not because they're poorly designed, but because darkness transforms their characteristics from manageable to deadly. From the Cetabria's visibility challenges, to the Pit's blindness, to the Kodiak's backcountry environment, each represents a different flavor of night-flying terror. If you found this valuable, subscribe and enable notifications. Next week, we're exposing the 3 worst aircraft for teaching student pilots, designs that create bad habits and dangerous situations. And comment below if you've experienced the terror of night flying in these aircraft. Your stories might save someone's life. Thanks for watching. And remember, some aircraft should simply never leave the ground after sunset, no matter how experienced you are.